A bad back, a bad divorce, bad experiences on set. Why did this 90s heartthrob suddenly disappear from movies and media? And does a Reddit campaign have anything to do with his comeback? Hi, I'm Peter, and you're watching OSSA. And when I was growing up, some of my favorite films were Airheads, George of the Jungle, and of course, The Mummy. So this video allowed me to investigate something very personal to me, namely, whatever happened to Brendan Fraser. It feels like Brendan Fraser's early career was something aspiring Hollywood actors can only dream of. This virtual unknown with only a couple of bit parts to his name seemed to come out of nowhere, his fame and popularity exploding with as much energy and excitement as the star himself. But looking back now, it's not hard to see why he landed so many memorable roles. Fraser's handsome and boyish charm, along with a rare combination of classically good looks and great comedic timing, made him the obvious choice for directors looking for a fish-out-of-water character. While he could also handle dignified roles and go toe-to-toe with acting legends like Ian McKellen in Gods and Monsters and the quiet American opposite Michael Caine, it was a run of goofy hits like Encino Man, Blast from the Past, and George of the Jungle that made Brendan a welcome presence on the silver screen. He soon cornered the market in lovable, guileless innocence, all of which is especially painful as we'll soon discover how an incident with one Hollywood elite would rob us of that innocence. But more on that later. Back in the 90s, Fraser's star was on the rise. Couple this with his willingness to perform his own stunts and you had a bankable star with mass appeal. It's no wonder he was chosen for the role of adventurer Rick O'Connell in 1999's The Mummy, a role written for bigger stars like Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, or Ben Affleck, who all passed it up. Still, Fraser made this landmark role his own, a part that would have made a young Harrison Ford jealous, and it's one that saw Brendan taking about as much punishment as Indiana Jones in the process. On and on, Fraser threw himself quite literally into his work. Ironically, for the star of 2003's Looney Tunes Back in Action, Fraser couldn't bounce back from pratfalls and painful stunts as easily as a cartoon. But Brendan was desperate to please directors and even more eager to prove himself to the public. And as the films made less and less money, Fraser ramped up the stunts more and more. Looking back on everything, in an interview with GQ, Fraser admitted, "I believe I probably was trying too hard, in a way that's destructive. By the time I did the third Mummy picture in China, I was put together with tape and ice, just like really nerdy and fetishy about ice packs. Screw cap ice packs and downhill mountain biking pads, because they're small and light and they can fit under your clothes. I was building an exoskeleton for myself, daily. And when that exoskeleton wouldn't do the trick, Fraser spent a small fortune fixing issues surgically. He had part of his spine removed, and then more than a year later, when that surgery was unsuccessful, he needed a knee replacement and more operations, fusing his compressed vertebrae and spinal pads together. And it wasn't just his bones. Even Fraser's voice was literally broken, with surgery needed to repair his damaged vocal cords. Brendan spent 7 years in and out of hospital, just doing his best to hold his shattered body together. But why endure years of punishment? Well, it was all because of Fraser's work ethic. As he explained ruefully to GQ magazine, "I felt like the horse from Animal Farm, whose job it was to work and work and work. He worked for the good of the whole. He didn't ask questions, he didn't make trouble until it killed him. I've had to rebuild shit that I've got built that got knocked down and do it again for the good of everyone, whether it hurts you or not." And there was more than just physical hurt going on in the background. The movie star was suffering emotional turmoil that threatened his life, his health, and his career just as much as any medical procedure. Shortly after the third installment in the Mummy franchise, and just after he'd finalized the sale of his LA home for over $3 million, Brendan found himself in the middle of a messy divorce. The timing couldn't have been worse for Fraser, as Afton Smith, the mother of his 3 children and his wife for a decade, decided to part ways with the star in 2008. What happened between them? Why did they split? Well, no one can say for certain, and that's why rumors soon started to swirl around the proceedings, with tabloid tattle fueled by court orders and punishing alimony payments that saw Brendan having to hand his wife nearly $1 million per year. The couple returned to court time and time again, and things got really ugly. Fraser claimed his income was virtually nil, while Afton alleged that the actor was hiding his financial assets and earnings to avoid paying up. For what it's worth, Brendan's reasoning for lowballing his estimated income was his ailing body and shattered confidence. He just didn't think there'd be roles for him to be able to make enough to afford the punishing alimony payments. He was firmly convinced that his career was in decline and that major roles were just drying up. But why was he so certain that his professional life was in such a tailspin? It turns out that it wasn't just Fraser's health that convinced him that he couldn't land roles. The star fully believes that there was a conspiracy involved in the derailing of his movie career. Inspired by Me Too, Brendan revealed an incident in 2003 involving former Hollywood Foreign Press Association president Philip Burke. While Burke has admitted to a playful interaction, Fraser says it went much further and involved groping that left him feeling humiliated and sick. I felt ill. I felt like a little kid. I felt like there was a ball in my throat. I thought I was going to cry. I felt like someone had thrown invisible paint on me. While Fraser's representatives sought and received an official apology from Burke, the whole thing was rather non-committal. Furthermore, Fraser thought he'd been blacklisted as a result of pushing back over the incident, and he tortured himself with it over and over to this very day. It led to some very dark days for the actor, frozen in fear about speaking up. Am I still frightened? Absolutely. Do I feel like I need to say something? Absolutely. Have I wanted to many times? Absolutely. Have I stopped myself? Absolutely. In the end, Brendan was inspired by the Time's Up and Me Too movement and found the courage to reveal this awful incident in 2018. Fraser cited Rose McGowan, Ashley Judd, and Mira Sorvino, specifically actresses he recognizes as people with the courage to say what I didn't have the courage to say. This traumatic experience, coupled with his ailing health and the eventual dissolution of his marriage, sent Fraser into a spiral of self-doubt. Brendan was allegedly in the running for the part of Superman in a project written by now amazingly famous director J.J. Abrams that ultimately never materialized, especially as Fraser's audition piece involved a disastrous meeting with then-director Brett Ratner. This seemingly standard rejection was a blow to Brendan's confidence, compounding the feelings of shame. You feel like, I didn't measure up. Oh, I failed. And the truth is, you didn't. That's erroneous. That's wrong. It's not true. You didn't fail. You're not. But even if as I sit here and say that to you now, I feel like, well, no, the proof's right there. The rebooting of the Mummy franchise could have also been a big chance for Fraser to return to Hollywood with some kind of role or involvement, but in the end, he wasn't even consulted. Being so instrumental in cementing the franchise in the public consciousness, you'd think that Brendan could come on as an executive producer or even as some kind of consultant, but it wasn't meant to be. Even if the phone hadn't stopped ringing, Fraser certainly stopped answering, and could well be describing imposter syndrome perfectly when he told GQ that the simple reason he pretty much gave up on making movies was that I didn't feel that I belonged. But none of this would have been discovered if all of this hadn't come to a head after a famously dismal interview with AOL Build, where it seemed like the famously fun-loving and joyful Fraser had vanished before our very eyes. Anyone accustomed to his 90s image would have been shocked at the contrast as Brendan struggled to discuss his career in an extended interview, discussing his role on Showtime's TV series The Affair. Quiet, mumbling, occasionally looking like he was on the verge of tears. There were momentary flashes of the actor people knew and loved, but all essentially agreed the spark was gone. Only now do we know that Fraser's mother had died just days before the interview, almost coinciding with Brendan's 48th birthday. This crushing loss seemed to have completely demolished Fraser, and people took notice. When Brendan did make a rare appearance in public, it was always a sad reminder of what he used to be. This massive contrast was impossible not to notice, and fans began to comment more and more and pay more and more attention. Oh my God, what the hell happened? We need to save him. He looks like a shell of a man. The poor guy. I normally don't care about celebs, But human to human, I want to give this man a hug. He needs it. This is hard to watch. As usual, the internet latched onto this piece of pop culture with message boards and later Reddit attempting to make Brendan Fraser's disappearance from the silver screen a cause célèbre. After all, his early 90s films were from an era of filmmaking that was now seen as a little corny, slightly trashy, and therefore eminently memeable. Some feel the internet was responsible for what came next, but others are less sure about the impact of this fad from a couple of years ago. But what was at first an ironic, tongue-in-cheek and slightly cruel joke campaign to get Brendan Fraser back into movies and the public consciousness in general gradually morphed into something real and occasionally heartfelt. The Brendan-based subreddit r/SaveBrendan still posts updates, with some fans sharing genuinely enthusiastic photos with the star, as well as occasional updates about his career. And it turns out they've got more and more to talk about these days. It seems like in the last couple of years, thanks to a combination of internet pressure, brave and sincere interviews, and Brendan's own will to get back on the horse, Brendan Fraser's career is undergoing a big turnaround. No matter what has happened to him in the past, he hasn't gone anywhere, and after taking an understandable time out to emotionally, financially, and literally physically put himself back together, his future is looking a lot brighter. The man has matured and changed direction a bit, but it looks like Fraser is getting back to his own self. Aside from two major network dramas, FX's Trust and Condor, what else could be more perfect for someone trying to shield himself from the slings and arrows of the world while piecing himself together than Robot Man in DC's Doom Patrol, especially since the character's body was also blown apart in a dangerous NASCAR stunt, and now reconstituted in a metal body joins a group of misfits and outcasts who also feel like they no longer have a place in the world. Almost too appropriate, this feels like the kind of role Fraser was meant to play. In no small part thanks to Brendan, the series was renewed for a second season that will air this year. And there are many other major projects involving Brendan Fraser that were released recently too, including a welcome return to the movies. After last year's The Poison Rose, where Fraser starred alongside A-listers like John Travolta and Morgan Freeman, Brendan also made a surprising appearance as the main antagonist in Bollywood film Line of Descent. And this time, it was Brendan stealing parts from another Hollywood star. Ray Liotta was originally cast in the part, but according to the director Rohit Khan Batra, the more the script evolved, the more obvious it became Brendan was the best choice for the idiosyncratic role of Charu. It was fantastic. He had a lot of respect for the actors. And there's yet more good news for Fraser fans, as the film Behind the Curtain of Night, a life-after-death drama in the vein of What Dreams May Come, looks all set to release later this year. It's as Brendan himself said to GQ, "Something good came out of something that was bad. Sometimes it takes a while for that to happen." And if anyone has waited long enough and deserves that something good, I think we can all agree, it's Brendan Fraser. What do you think? Are you similarly excited for the Renaissance? Which Brendan Fraser film is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. I personally love the criminally underrated The Quiet American. Fraser's portrayal of a well-meaning but ill-fated CIA stooge, Alden Pyle, it's just perfect. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay awesome.